The diary of the CDO is essentially a collection of stories that it aims to lift the lid on the role, on the Chief Data Officer role, and why now more than ever it's important that data, AI, and the role of the Chief Data Officer are really understood, and those things drive organisational success. So the stories that we'll tell through the diary of the CDO explore the breadth of the role, why it's important, why now, the environment needed for success, and importantly, how it has impact. Whether an organisation chooses to put the Chief Data Officer on the board is an ongoing debate. But what isn't a debate is the need for someone who's responsible for, setting, defining, and getting motivation behind a strategy for improving how an organisation uses data. There is a lot of question about whether that is necessary, whether it's needed in organisations. We don't have the same question when it comes to CFOs necessarily, but what we do have questions about in other sort of board positions is the level of seniority, whether you call it a chief something officer, CFO in some organisations is a finance director, a chief marketing officer in some organisations is the marketing director. So I think in that respect it's quite similar, but the important part is that there is someone who's responsible for these things. I think if the overall data leader, Chief Data Officer or otherwise, reports into the board, then the person they report into essentially takes responsibility for that person and their remit and their responsibilities of that person. They need to represent or give the platform for the CDO to represent what is required at a board level. And why does it need to be represented at that level? It's because data is a horizontal that sits across an organisation. It has impact. It can have impact in every different sort of function, every different business unit, every different part of the organisation. So there's a potential for it to touch on anyone that sits at the board level. It also generally requires a level of investment that is kind of a board decision or exec or management committee decision to invest that hard and that fast. And the appetite of the board is going to be important to ensuring success, ensuring that there's bandwidth, ensuring that resources allocated to it. And if that's not represented, if it's not bought in, if it's not approved by the senior level of the organisation, then you can't drive the success. Organisations all have their own uniqueness. They have their own unique culture. They have their own unique way of going about business. They have their own unique values. They have performance changes throughout the year in terms of how they're delivering against their own plans, their own budgets. And depending on all of those things, that context, that uniqueness, it changes, I think, how they perceive different roles generally within an organisation, and particularly in this kind of like emerging and burgeoning and growing and necessary role of data leadership in the CDO. It changes the context of how they need to operate. So the culture of the organisation changes how data might be seen. The appetite for pace and change and innovation changes how fast you can move. The appetite for investing in things that they're a bit of a leap of faith changes how fast and how hard you can invest in data analytics. Whether data is seen as a technical thing or whether it's seen as a real enabler for driving transformational change changes the way that how much impact a Chief Data Officer and data in general can have on an organisation. So I think all those things adjust and shape what people do, how people do it, and how it's seen within an organisation. And Chief Data Officers on the way into an organisation need to understand that, as do the people that are receiving, on the receiving end of the value that they're trying to deliver.